Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Yasaka, Grayfia and Venelana? Part 1. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, so without wasting any time let's get into the video. Akeno sighed as she finished filing the receipts for her department. It was the same thing she did every day, but she was still bored. The monotony of her office job was getting to her, and it was so boring. She wanted to find a stray devil to torture, to revel in its shrieks of pain, as it finally gave up hope and died, to help her relax and relieve some stress. Perhaps my darling husband could give me a massage at home tonight, she thought with a mild blush. Decades have passed since the Cows Brigade was defeated, but she didn't age due to her devil nature. After everything had simmered down in the supernatural world, she had gotten a job as a manager in the Tokyo branch of one of the many businesses the Grayfia family had in Japan, called Crimson Rian Princess Incorporated, or CRP for short, extremely unique name thought out by Rias. Since she was Ria's queen, she obviously didn't need any interview process, and as she already did secretarial work for Rias, she fit right into her role at CRP. The company itself dabbled into many fields, and she oversaw the management of the various ventures on paper. She could have very well become the CEO of the Japan subsidiary, but she didn't want the hassle and the added responsibility. The job also paid very well, almost as much as some businessmen would make. When she was released from her service to Rias and got married afterwards, she wanted to settle down and try her hand at a day job. She was excited to forge a new path for herself and seize the day, and I can't do this stupid job anymore. She hadn't thought that it would be so boring. Now she was trapped in her dead-end job and she couldn't quit because her idiot, lovable husband convinced her by lecturing her about taking responsibility and finishing what you started and whatnot. He didn't force her to keep working, but his arguments were so damn logical that she was actually convinced. It wasn't fair that he had fun running his cute little ramen stand while she was stuck in this dump. Even the storage room for filing papers looked like the personification of plain. Cream-colored walls, aluminum cabinets stacked on top of each other, and a plastic desk with a wheelie chair. The ceilings had cracks in it, there was the signature water cooler in a corner, and for a second she thought she saw a rat sleeping in the corner. Even the mold looked like it was stressed from meeting a deadline. Even the rats are bored, sigh. And she couldn't just go on electrocuting her coworkers for kicks, however much she might despise them. Seriously, how could grown men and women act like lost puppies in her very presence? Didn't they understand that she was a married woman? Hell, half of them were married themselves, for God''s ouch sake. She always turned them down, but they just kept coming back like flies. At least she was done for the day, now she could go home and relax. She had just exited the storage room and was packing up to head home for the day. She smiled at the interns, who promptly started swooning and blushing madly. She couldn't blame them, she reminded herself. Many men and women alike found her incredibly alluring, dressed in a black blazer, white shirt, black pencil skirt, thigh-length stockings and black heels. Her long midnight black hair was tied in a ponytail with her signature orange ribbon, but now it had a spiral pattern embroidered in the material. It also didn't help that she teased all her coworkers at every possible opportunity. Hey, just because she was married didn't mean her personality should change. In fact, her husband didn't mind at all because he is a total sweetheart like that and told her to just be herself. Akeno-sama, marry me? It's Akeno-sama. She's so pretty. Such comments of worship were commonplace for her ever since her school days. Imbeciles, the lot of them. As if I would go for any of these wimps. One teensy shock and they'd all be frothing at the mouth. Was her general reaction to such people. She was married after all. But even if she weren't, she wouldn't give these people the time of day. Wherever she went, be it Kuo, her university or her job, these hopeless cronies always showed up. I can't wait to get home and eat whatever delicious food he's made for me, she thought, licking her lips in anticipation. Just the thought of her husband's homemade cooking made her mouth water. Almost done, just 5 more minutes, and she could teleport home to eat his scrumptious warm food, she thought. Why walk when you could literally bend space and travel in an instant? She never had any commuting problems due to her ability. She was broken out of her musing when her colleague, a man named Yamada, approached her. He was a moderately attractive man, she thought, and were she single, she might have led him on to relish his sad look when she brutally shot him down. That's a marvelous idea, but I'm not even going to pretend to cheat on him. This one was thankfully single himself, or she would pity his partner. That would be just like someone she knew very well. Even as he spoke, he was busy staring at her. Yamada was wearing what was quite possibly the only outfit that would make her day even more boring: a cream-colored shirt, checkered tie, corduroy trousers and a suede jacket. His brown hair was slicked back and she could see the first hints of baldness. This was a stressful job after all. For humans at least. "Oh my, who is this sitcom professor character you have dropped in front of me?" She was honestly taken aback by the sheer plain of his outfit. "Oh no, Akeno-san." Yamada began, blushing and fidgeting slightly. "Would you like to go out for drinks with me and some of the guys after the shift is over?" he asked, the sheer hope in his eyes making her inwardly smirk in amusement. His guys were random extras like himself, looking at her like puppies would their master. "We really wanted to get to know our beautiful manager who does so much for us every day." Akeno mentally rolled her eyes at the pathetic attempt at asking her out. Smiling beatifically, she replied, "Ara Yamada-san, I do hope you aren't hitting on a married woman, my, what would my husband think if he saw you?" Of course her husband would not do anything harsh, except maybe put some itching powder in that suede monstrosity. Looking sheepish at being caught, Yamada tried to save his plummeting reputation by saying, "Ahahaha, let me be honest, Akeno-san, most of the guys think that you are out of that guy's league. None of us have even seen him. I mean, what could a ramen stand owner possibly give you? He doesn't deserve you, Akeno-san." Throughout the idiot's diatribe, Akeno's eyes grew progressively colder and her smile became more forced. The temperature in the room started steadily dropping and Yamada and his mooks could feel some kind of unseen pressure weighing down on their shoulders. Then the most surprising thing happened, Akeno started to giggle. But this giggle was not her usual demure giggle which sent her fans into a haze. This sound was more like the cackling of the Shinigami according to Yamada, at least, while Yamada and company were struggling to remain focused, Akeno, however, was lost in her own thoughts. Akeno's mind. Akeno-sama, please stop, it hurts." Yamada shouted as he was electrocuted for the umpteenth time. His friends were already passed out in a corner courtesy of a nasty shock, but this peasant who dared insult her beloved would suffer for a long time. She stopped the steady stream of electricity and Yamada slumped to the ground, nearly dead. He looked like he had seen much better days and had so many bruises it looked like a big plum. "You know," she began, "normally, I would have turned you down and we would have gone our separate ways. But then you made a really bad mistake," she said, giggling sadistically as his eyes widened. "I'm so sorry, Akeno-sama, I won't bother you again, please spare me," he wailed hopelessly, like the worm he was. She giggled again, she was really enjoying this. "Oh how I missed this," she thought. Yamada-san, your mistake wasn't asking me out, you know," she began silkily while lightning crackled at her fingertips. "Oh no, your mistake was when you spoke about my husband without knowing him." At this point her beautiful face was curled up in a vicious snarl as she shocked him yet another time. She was pissed now. "As if a worm like you could even compare to him, you piece of filth. You are but an ant in his presence." She spat. "You know nothing of the wonderful man he is, of what he's done for me, and you dare slander his name." She all but shouted as the poor man recoiled in fear. He shrieked again as she shocked him once more. She was having so much fun. Real world. Akeno was giggling madly while blushing up a storm. "Am I a yandier now?" she idly mused. While this was going on, poor Yamada thought that this was a reaction she had to his offer. Emboldened by the response he received, he pressed on. "So, about what I asked," he ventured. The game plan was that he would escort Akeno to a local restaurant to meet the guys, but the guys would mysteriously call and cancel, all of them would. Then it would be just him and Akeno-san, and he could finally win her heart and convince her to leave that low-class fool of a ramen chef she called her husband. "Oh, it's all going nicely," he thought. How little he knew. Meanwhile, his words had snapped Akeno out of her trance. She turned her focus on the sniveling dolt in front of her. Her frigid gaze made him feel like his soul was being torn apart. Slowly, while restraining her rage, the black-haired beauty asked, "Would you care to repeat that, Yamada-san?" She absolutely hissed through gritted teeth. Hi. I was asking. I'm afraid I'll have to decline, and please refrain from hitting on married women again, especially me, okay?" She interrupted him with a positively saccharine smile. "And Yamada-san, please don't say such things about my husband, he might not react kindly to you hitting on his wife and insulting him behind his back." Her smile grew larger, if it was possible. Them not reacting kindly would be an understatement, she thought. The last time such a thing happened was Fallen Angel hit on her when he was nearby. The Fallen was using the cliché "ditch this loser and have fun with me" bit. He would not take no for an answer and kept bugging her. When she still refused, the crow tried to grab her hand. While she could have easily dealt with that crow herself, she didn't have to, as her husband took him into an alley and broke his wings as well as every bone in the idiot's body. When she came back to the real world, she found that Yamada had already scampered off. She didn't expect much from him anyway. Pushing unnecessary thoughts out of her mind, she went into her office and locked her door. Her office was much better than the storeroom, as she used magic to make it bigger from the inside, like a bastardized version of a raiding game dimension. The office was lined with purple wallpaper. It had black leather couches, a mahogany desk for her and a Victorian-style chair. Her office was a beautiful and relaxing place where she could get away from the boredom of the day. On the desk were many things which were important to her. There was her old orange ribbon, a photo of her circle, and various stationery. The most prominent article, however, was the picture frame in the middle of her desk, which showed her and a blonde man making peace signs and smiling goofily at the camera. She smiled wistfully and skirted her fingers over the glass, checking the door. On finding no one, she prepared her magic. Beneath her feet, an orange spiral mark appeared, which housed images of many animals at different regions of the spiral, ranging from a raccoon to an octopus octopus hybrid. But the most prominent was the regal-looking nine-tailed fox at the center of the spiral. If she didn't know any better, she would have assumed it to be a yokai. It was a testament to her husband's prowess with seals that instead of letters, the magic in the spell was conveyed by images. The Uzumaki clan crest. Her clan crest, she thought with pride. I'm coming home, and you better have food ready, Naruto-kun. She thought before she vanished in an orange flash. Naruto smiled as he delivered another bowl of piping hot ramen to his customers, a family of 4, who were more or less his regulars. The Nobi family were a cheerful bunch, always smiling, joking and generally happy. They were also one of the first customers to grace his shop when he relocated to Tokyo after mysteriously disappearing from his earlier home in Kuo. He couldn't have people wondering how he still looked to be in his 20s after decades of living there, now could he? The Nabas were a joy to be around. The father, Takashi, was a pretty nice guy and loved his family a lot, which made Naruto respect the man. His wife, Mia, was a lot like Naruto's own wife, as she loved to tease and mess with people in general. Of course, she didn't enjoy torturing people in her spare time like Akeno did, but it was a welcome change nonetheless. Seated between them were the couple's 2 daughters. They were named Ray and May, and they were identical twins. They were absolutely adorable and loved Ramen almost as much as he himself did. Breaking out of his thoughts, he greeted them. "Hi guys, how's it going? If you need anything else, tell me, okay?" Mia smiled at him, while Takashi had already started stuffing his face with ramen, earning him a bonk on the head from his wife. "Thank you, Naruto, we're all fine. But we'll probably have some sake, if you would." "Sure, I'll bring some over right away." "Thank you." She nodded. "Girls, what do we say to Uncle Naruto?" "Banku on Konaru." 2 squeaky voices chirruped, which made Naruto pat their heads, earning him pleasant hums from the kids. "It's no problem, girls, just eat slowly, K? It's not going anywhere, you know," he said while chuckling, which made the twins glare at him, but they just looked like angry puppies. This idle conversation went on till closing time, when the Nabas finally left. Naruto headed to the back to finish cleaning up so that he could go home and make dinner for himself and his wife. His wife had gotten a job with a grimoire business, a name he couldn't remember. It was a far cry from when he met her while she was still in school and fighting in deathmatches for entertainment. Now, some may ask why she wasn't serving Rias, competing in raiding games and so on. It was fairly simple, in reality. Since long-term peace between the 3 factions was achieved, there was not as much of a need as before for devils to restore their numbers. This, along with various objections and outcries about the moral and ethical violations brought about by the evil peace system, led to a massive overhaul in how peerages worked. The Juka Beelzebub, with the help of Azazel and Michael, came up with a new recruitment system in which free will was greatly emphasized and which could be used by members of any of the 3 factions to better integrate themselves and further strengthen the peace. The king had to ask the potential member before performing the resurrection, and it had to be done in a free and fair manner. If the king did anything with a malicious intent, the king peace inside them would not permit the resurrection. So any trickery, coercion or magic was out of the question, since the king peace was bound to the soul of the devil. As long as the devil knew what they were doing, the peace wouldn't reincarnate anyone. Also, those who were revived after death were given 1 week's time to leave the peerage without any consequences, while keeping the second life. Devils were marked as strays only if they committed a crime against their king or against society in general. Simply leaving the peerage wasn't a crime anymore. This new system was called the Inner Circle system. She was therefore in Ria's inner circle, as queen. The class system in the Devil Society also changed a lot. Many of the old elitist fossils on the council who still advocated purist supremacy were either killed in the war against the Cows Brigade or replaced by more progressive competent heirs. Designations like high or low class were more of a formality than any actual indication of ability or prestige. There was noticeably less stigma attached to being low class or reincarnated, and society as a whole was progressing. It was all to make sure another Riser incident or Nekashu incident did not occur again. After the war, she along with all those who played an important role in their victory were given promotions to high class. Hence she could now have her own peerage while having a lesser responsibility towards Rias. Once the inner circle system became widespread, all existing pieces were converted to the newer system. Due to this, many of the devils who had been forcefully converted in one way or another left their masters now simply called kings and went their merry ways. This led to a stop in raiding games until their numbers were restored. Devils were no longer scouting for circle members to show off, and so the system of raiding games gradually became obsolete. Eventually Rias had given her entire circle a chance to forge their own paths from under her shadow, as she had wanted for herself for so long. And that's what she did. Snapping out of his thoughts, Naruto closed up the shop and prepared to hurry home. Who needed fancy magic circles and runes when you could just vanish? As he flashed into his living room, he looked at his wedding photo on the wall, with him hugging Akeno, while the both of them were smiling at the camera. His gaze softened as he remembered how they met. Flashback, roughly 40 years ago, Kuo Town. Naruto glared at the person laying in a heap at his feet. Violet Rinnegan pulsed menacingly, with 9 tomos circling hypnotically in them. He had half a mind to just kill the little shit, but he needed to know. He needed to know why these devils had been bothering him so much lately. Don't get him wrong, he always had 1 or 2 supernaturals bugging him every week. Even though he wasn't actively involved in their affairs, his latent power and aura subconsciously attracted other supernaturals to him like moths to a flame. Be it devils, or fallen angels, or even some yakai. Angels were by far the most preferable, as they had no ill intent towards him. He even had that lowly dragon approach him a time or 2 per month to join her in helping restore her silence. He honestly did not understand why she could not just go somewhere else to sleep in the infinite abyss of the gap. And he certainly wasn't going to help her kill Great Red. The guy was his friend, after all. The Red Dragon's delinquent personality was a refreshing change to the more snobby and arrogant supernaturals he knew. The guy literally spent his time doing flips and stunts, so of course when Naruto came across him, he had declared that he was going to do better stunts than Red himself, and a rivalry had ensued. The both of them were buddies now. He had met the 2 dragons when he showed up in the dimensional gap, battered and broken, after a mishap in sealing Kagaya. The 2 beings had taken an interest in him, as he had the same power levels as them. This was the sole reason why they hadn't just killed him when he was injured and defenseless. When Naruto had finally settled down in Kuo and opened his shop, these pests had started showing up. He mostly just beat them to a pulp and gained jutsu to away the memories with his eyes, but he was getting fed up now. He wanted to find out what their endgame was and put a stop to it so he could live in peace. Sighing in exasperation, he prepared to use one of the jutsu he really hated using. It was everything he had fought against, but in this case it was necessary. It helped that all he could sense from this devil was evil and malice. He placed his hand on the downed man's forehead and spoke in a low voice. Ninjin. Naruto stilled momentarily as a rush of memories came into his head from the man's mind and he finally got his answer. How's Brigade? Brisbane Live in Lucifer. Trihixa. Brisbane Live in Lucifer was forming an organization, the main purpose of which was to invade the world using the evil dragons from other dimensions. For that goal, they sought to defeat Great Red who protected the dimensional gap by reviving the legendary beast, 666, Trihixa. Granted, they weren't anywhere close to executing such plans. It would take them years yet, but it was still troublesome. Naruto was lucky that this devil was a member, or else he wondered how he would have gotten this information. This was a really stupid plan according to him, as so many things could go wrong in it. He would have to inform Red that there were many different factions gunning for him. Seriously, leave the poor guy alone, will ya? Why does everyone want to either kill or banish him for Kami's sake? Let him do his stunts in peace, damn it, he hasn't done anything to anyone. Shaking his head, he created a Kage Bunshin to inform Red about these happenings, and the clone left for the dimensional gap via Yamatsu Hirasaka. Normally, he would be done with it and would have gone home after closing up the shop. However, this mook had made the mistake of trying to wreck the place, in hopes of luring him out. He had also insulted Ramen. So Naruto ripped the man's soul out of his head and crushed it into oblivion. Sealing the corpse of the devil into a scroll and burning it via Amaterasu, he left to go in and finish cleaning up. He would go home and rest up for tomorrow. Just as he was about to go out and flip the sign, the bell attached to the door chimed, and in walked one of the most beautiful women he had ever seen. She was a young woman with very long black hair and violet eyes. Her hair was tied in a long ponytail, reaching all the way down to her legs, with 2 strands sticking out from the top and sloping backward, with an orange ribbon keeping it in place. Like most of the girls at Kuo Academy, she wore the customary Kuo Academy girls' school uniform, along with black calf-length socks. Just as Naruto was about to snap out of his stupor and apologize for staring, she interrupted him. Excuse me, but are you open? She said in a silky voice, almost like it was gliding over his ears. She was smiling angelically at him, but it didn't take him more than one look to discern that her smile was horribly fake, much like his own back when he was a child. It made his interest in her rise even more. "Ah yes, I was just about to close, but I can make an exception for once, you know," he said, hoping that he didn't come across as a flirt. He just wanted to know more about this woman, not necessarily in a romantic sense. There was something about her, something that drew him to her. She was like her mystery, and that smile certainly had some secrets behind it. He also sensed two conflicting energies from her. The devil-full and hybrid, eh? I knew this girl was interesting. The girl let out a demure giggle and smiled even wider. "Thank you, I was really hungry and this is the only place that was open. Could I have your name?" "The name's Uzumaki Naruto, and don't you forget it, you know," Naruto replied, grinning. "And what about you, miss?" "Ufufufu, my name is Himejima Akeno, it's nice to meet you, Naruto-san." "Likewise, Akeno-san, please have a seat. What can I get ya?" he asked as the girl took a seat on one of the stools. Akeno seemed to be deep in thought as she looked over the menu. Ultimately, she decided on miso ramen and Naruto went inside to prepare the food. While she waited, she thought over the past few moments. The blonde looked to be about her age and he had a cute kind of feral look to him with those whisker marks of his. His blue eyes were also the most unique pair of eyes she'd seen in quite some time. She idly wondered why he was working and not attending school, but felt like it wasn't her place to ask. One thing was for sure though, she had taken an interest in the blonde. After about 5 minutes, Naruto came back with the order and set it down in front of her. Akeno looked like she was about to drool any second from the delicious smell of the ramen. Slowly, she dug in and brought the first bite to her dainty lips. As she ate the initial morsel, her eyes widened in surprise. She had never eaten such fabulous food before. Every ingredient was in perfect harmony and no one taste overpowered any of the others. She was lost in her own world as she ate and she didn't even remember finishing the whole bowl. Looking up from her food-induced daze, the ravenette blushed slightly in embarrassment as she caught Naruto looking at her with amusement in her eyes. She had gotten too engrossed in her meal to worry about trivial things like eating speed or manners. Not one to give someone else the last laugh, she tried to embarrass him in retaliation for her own situation. Naruto-san, you're looking at me so intensely." She gasped, "What is a girl to think, are you interested in me?" She purred, batting her eyelashes. It had to work, she reasoned. Any normal man would have gotten the double entendre and started to blush or sputter in embarrassment. Any normal man, she thought, would be unable to resist her charms. How wrong she was. She blinked. Once. Twice. She looked at the chef and the sheer clueless expression of his, accompanied by a cute head tilt, convinced her that he'd understood not a word of what she'd said. He was honestly confused and she didn't know what to think when this man didn't swoon in her presence or stare at her like an idiot. Her mind offered up the elegant retort of, "You the nerve of this man. He'd managed to not only embarrass her twice, but had done so without doing anything himself. This won't stand, she decided. She was the embarrasser, not the embarrassed. She would find some way to tease him, to make him blush, if it's the last thing she did. She would come back and she would keep coming back until she achieved her goal. It was the only reason she would even come back to a place like this, she thought half-heartedly. Just to get one over the cute blonde, nothing else. Absolutely nothing to do with the cute blonde whatsoever. It helped that the ramen was delicious, though. Flashback end. It was when Naruto was finishing dinner that he saw the signature flash of orange created by the Uzumaki teleportation circle. He had made the runes from scratch using this world's magic, and it worked wonderfully. Anyone from Naruto's immediate family or anyone he inducted into their clan could use the seal to teleport to a place of their choice, much like all other clan seals. But this one was orange. And it was marvelous. Logistics aside, there was currently just one person in his family capable of using magic, and that meant only one thing. Akeno-chan is home. Creating a clone to finish up with the food, Naruto went to the living room just in time to see his wife appear out of thin air. She still looked as beautiful as the day they met and the office attire only added to her appeal. Just as she finished materializing, Naruto promptly glumped her. "Akeno-chan. Welcome home, I missed you." He shot off, obviously delighted to see her. "How was your day? Did you eat properly? Are you hungry? Did you?" Akeno sighed fondly as her husband continued to rattle on with his mundane questions. While many other women would hate when their husbands fussed over them, she loved it quite a bit. Those idiot floozies didn't know what they were missing. A caring husband who loves you unconditionally, is really handsome, and cooks for you. She'd be stupid to get annoyed at him for that. Plus, his mother hen personality was very charming, in her opinion. Still, she was tired due to a long day at work in Yamada and as much as she loved her husband, she needed silence right now. She just wanted to relax and eat whatever tasty dinner he had cooked for them. Naruto was cut off when Akeno placed a finger to his lips, halting his inquiries. His cheeks tinged pink at being caught rambling again, and his embarrassment was only amplified after seeing that smug look on her face. She knew exactly what she was doing, the minx. It wasn't his fault. He couldn't help but fuss over her when she came back looking all tired like that. What kind of husband would he be if he failed to identify when his wife was stressed? Naruto knew she didn't mind, but Akeno loved to tease him. Well, he would see how she liked it when he teased her in return. Naruto flinched back from her and looked at her as if she'd slapped him. Mustering the most hurt expression he could manage, he looked at his wife, going incredibly still. His face was void of emotion, and the only way Akeno could tell that his feelings were hurt was from his eyes, which displayed a profound sorrow. "Oh Naruto, you fabulous actor, you." He cackled, praising himself inwardly. Seeing as his message hadn't entirely gone across, Naruto decided to up his game. Slumping his shoulders in defeat, his face remained blank as he let out a long suffering sigh. He looked away from Akeno and began in a monotone voice. "I'm sorry for being so overbearing, Akeno." He got out, using a small amount of Suiton chakra for added tears. "I will try to tone it down from now on, you probably don't like me being so clingy." He continued, looking worse than a kicked puppy. "Aha." He cheered mentally when he saw Akeno's eyes widening in shock. She must be thinking that he misunderstood her actions, he mused. She must be thinking that she had hurt him. Not want to quit while he was ahead, Naruto pressed on. Turning away from her, he started dragging his feet towards the kitchen, maintaining his beaten posture. "A clone will bring you dinner, Akeno," he said, purposely dropping the chan for added effect. "I'll just be inside for a while." He turned to her and gave her a sad smile. "I'll try to be better in the future." All throughout his monologue, Akeno was getting more and more distraught. She had grabbed the handle of the couch and was staring at him with a wide, shocked gaze. Seeing as he had teased her enough, Naruto decided to end the joke. He could never bear seeing such despair on his wife's face, prank be damned. But before he could get a word in, Akeno blitzed him and crashed into his chest, hugging him tightly. Naruto instinctively wrapped his arms around her and he realized that she was shivering, no, trembling. Crap. Now I've gone and hurt her. He thought. He sometimes took his pranks too far and didn't know when to stop. Just as he was about to console his clearly distraught wife, she began speaking. "I'm sorry Naruto-kun, I didn't mean to imply that I didn't like it," she declared, looking up at him with big watery eyes. "I always love it when you fuss over me and take care of me." She had tears rolling down her cheeks now. "I shouldn't take your love for granted." Akeno was sobbing by now, each hiccup feeling like a sucker punch to Naruto's heart. She hugged him tightly and wailed some more. "I'm so sorry Naruto-kun, I'm a terrible wife. Please forgive me, I'm the worst. I'm horrible, selfish and..." Naruto interrupted her by hugging her back fiercely in a bid to comfort her in her frazzled state. He really was the worst, wasn't he? He made his lovely wife cry, and for what? A prank. Unacceptable. He was Naruto Uzumaki, he lived for his precious people, and he'd just made his most precious person break down and cry. He needed to fix this, and fast. He would apologize to Akeno, and then he would beg and grovel until she forgave him. No prank war was worth his wife's happiness. So, Naruto broke their embrace and cupped her face in his hands tenderly. He was about to wipe her tears and comfort her, only to find her smirking. Why was Akeno smirking? Wasn't she crying a minute ago? Naruto decided to recap the past few minutes. His wife had returned home after a long day at work and she'd embarrassed him by cutting off his rambling. Then he had decided to tease her as payback. Seeing the gears turn in her husband's head, Akeno let out a demure giggle. He was so cute when he tilted his head and acted all intelligent. Naruto-kun, did you think that I would let your teasing slide?" she asked, giving him an amused glance. "We have been married for decades, husband. I know all your tells by now." She saw his eyes widen in realization, making her giggle even more. "HMMPH." He pouted in anger, "But he just looked adorable. My wife is so mean to me, it makes me think you don't want the katsudon I made." Naruto put a finger under his chin, a mirthful gleam in his eye. The jab seemed to work, seeing as the teasing expression on Akeno's face was gone. She was staring far off into space, and her eyes were glazed over. Her lips were slightly parted, and a little bit of drool was waking through. Naruto smirked when he saw his wife state she always did love his cooking. Whenever his delicious meals were even mentioned, she lost all semblance of her Yamato Nadeshiko personality. It was fun and downright adorable to see the drastic change in Akeno's nature. It was how they met in the first place, after all. Katsudon with sake. Akeno trailed off, still imagining the meal she would be having. Suddenly, the meaning of his previous words struck her. Her eyes snapped towards Naruto, and she was in front of him in a flash. "Fine, dear husband, you win this time. Now can we please eat?" she said, with a fire in her eyes. Huffing out his chest in pride at winning their tiny prank war, Naruto ruffled his wife's hair, earning an indignant pout from her. "Akeno-chan, go and freshen up, okay? I'll have dinner set up by then." Seeing her enter their room to do just that, Naruto went about setting the table. It was almost an automatic task by now, which gave him the time to reminisce. He never would have thought that he would find such a loving wife. With his less than ideal childhood in his homeworld, he had developed a warped definition of love. He did not understand the difference between romantic love and familial love, never having experienced either of the two. Towards the end of the Fourth Shinobi War, a mishap unsealing Kaguya had made him immortal. He had but an hour to grasp the concept, and his initial conclusions had been unsettling at best. If he was to be immortal, anyone he held precious would die before his very eyes. It would take years or even decades, but they would pass all the same. And he would be forced to watch them slip by. He would be all alone, as even Kurama had been taken from him. Then, due to Kaguya's crazy jutsu, he got flung into a dimension where immortals were a dime a dozen. Talk about twisted luck. Seeing as he had no qualifications and/or skills, he had opened up a ramen shop after persuading the right people for permits and papers, of course. It was there that he met the woman who would go on to become his wife in the future. After their initial meeting, she came to the shop quite often, trying to embarrass him or get a rise out of him. Seeing as he was as dense as a brick back then, she failed spectacularly. Her interest in him evolved with time, and it didn't take her long to realize his issues. He had told her about his past after the first year, and she had done the same. Needless to say, she was not amused when told about his childhood. Even more so about his skewed concept of love, but that was easily fixed. She had literally zapped the concept of love into his head. They started dating shortly after and got engaged and married in quick succession. Both were headstrong individuals after all, and they weren't the sort to beat around the bush. He was snapped out of his musings when Akeno came out in her violet pajamas, an angelic smile on her beautiful face. He couldn't help but stare at her beauty. Even after being married for so long, he was still mesmerized by her radiance. He could just gaze at her for hours on end without rest. Not that she minded, of course. She liked to be admired and appreciated by her loving husband. Akeno caught him staring at her and smirked mentally. Now was the time to strike, to get him back for her earlier defeat. She put a hand on her cheek and tilted her head, fluttered her eyelashes at him and asked in a sweet voice. "Yufufufu, Hinata, you like what you see?" She inquired with a purr. "Close your mouth, dear, you'll catch flies." Now she would wait for his reaction. She waited for him to flush in embarrassment, to sputter out nonsense and try to form coherent sentences. But alas, Naruto lived up to his title and did something unpredictable. He closed the distance between them with boundless love in his eyes, gently embraced Akeno and kissed her forehead. Caught off guard by this sudden change in events, Akeno couldn't speak, but Naruto did. "You're so adorable, Akeno-chan, I really am the luckiest idiot in the world to have you as my wife." When she heard his words, Akeno gained a steady blush on her cheeks. Steam was about to erupt from her ears, that's how embarrassed she was. The last straw was when Naruto tucked her head under his chin, which prompted her to nuzzle her face into his shoulder. "It's not fair," she lamented inwardly, "I'm supposed to be the teaser here, and then he goes and says something like that." She didn't show it, but Akeno felt extremely giddy from their earlier exchange. It was always like this with them, she mused. Akeno would try to tease him and get a reaction out of him, and he would say the sweetest and most loving things which would shut down her brain and make her blush like a fangirl. She never could understand how he got such a reaction out of her, but she didn't care. For Naruto and only for him, she could tolerate being the one embarrassed. If that was the price of hearing his lovely compliments, she didn't mind. They stayed in their position for some time. Akeno recalled all that this blonde buffoon had done for her. He had fed her countless times and saved her life even more times. He helped her reconcile with her father and even brought forth her mother's soul via the King of Hell so that she could get some closure. But most importantly, he had given her his unconditional love. Due to her traumatic childhood, she had an immense hatred for fallen angels. When they told each other their pasts, he had held her until she recounted her tale and comforted her while she sobbed. Then he had asked to see her wings. She had been apprehensive at first to show her darkest secret, the part of her she hated most, to another. But she trusted Naruto, and so she did. She unfurled her wings and waited with bated breath. Waited for him to call her wings ugly, or tainted, or some such. He called them fluffy, tactless as he was. Akeno felt relieved all the same. They got married shortly after that, much to her delight. She looked at her husband, who was now setting the table while she waited. He had spent his whole life fighting, and when he came to their world, he just wanted to relax. Hence he had dabbled into cooking, for which she was ever thankful. Akeno was just as lucky to have found him as he was. In the world full of arrogant and snobbish supernaturals, she had found one of the few people who were unflinchingly loyal, devoted and kind. Even after 40 years, he had eyes only for her, loved only her. She always enjoyed making his fangirls jealous whenever they went out together. Akeno-chan, food is ready. Nodding in happiness, she dug into her meal, along with him. The food was delicious as always, with the perfect sweet sake paired with it. She then noticed her husband holding out a spoonful of food towards her, his intent clear. "Say ah, Akeno-chan," Naruto said, grinning at her. "Hinata, I am not a kid anymore," she replied while rolling her eyes, smiling softly. "I know that, dear, but can't a husband spoil his wife from time to time? You always spoil me, Naruto-kun." Naruto's grin grew even wider, his eyes twinkling with love, "and you deserve nothing less." Instead of getting embarrassed again, Akeno quickly ate the offered food and looked away, a small tinge of pink on her face. Just as she was about to recover and get a jab in. "My wife is so cute," Naruto wailed dramatically while glumping her sideways. And just like that, the blush was back. Akeno didn't know why she was surprised, Naruto was an incredibly expressive person. For someone who was starved of affection, he had found someone to love, someone who loved him back just as much. And he spared no expense pampering her and showering her with his love and care. She wouldn't trade it for the world. Deciding to change the subject, Naruto asked. "So tell me about your day, were you still bored?" Akeno glared at him in anger. "And whose fault is that, mister?" She jabbed a finger at him accusingly. "You're the one who convinced me about responsibilities and whatnot," she huffed. Not breaking their side hug, Naruto replied. "Because you had a contract, Akeno-chan, and you know it. You can't just use magic to get out of your problems, that's a shortcut. You know how I feel about those," he admonished, poking her nose. "Besides, you only have 1 month left anyway, then we can work at the shop together," he exclaimed with his usual enthusiasm. Sighing in resignation, Akeno nodded. There was no winning with him when it came to work ethic. "Imada Baka approached me today," she began, earning an interested look from her husband. "He was spouting bullshit about how you don't deserve me and that I should date him instead." She spat with a disgusted look. Instantly, Naruto's expression changed from interested to worried. "Is he okay?" Akeno twitched. "What kind of a question is that, Hinata? Shouldn't you be asking him if I'm okay?" "No, I asked correctly," came the reply. "Is he alive with his mind and body intact?" Akeno gasped. "How can you imply something like that, husband dear?" She looked hurt. Upon receiving the flattest deadpan ever, she sighed and relented. "He's fine, I wanted to torture him, but didn't. Could have broken a bone or two, though." The last part was muttered, but he heard her all the same. "That's my girl, I'm proud of you." Naruto beamed. "We should never care what others think about us, I know I never did." Akeno wholeheartedly agreed. The rest of the meal went by without a hitch, with the couple making idle conversation and just enjoying each other's presence. As night fell, Naruto and Akeno eventually retired to their bedroom. They cuddled up to each other and thought the same thing before being claimed by slumber. "I love you, and I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with you. Hokage-sama." A voice called out, stern but soft at the same time. "Zzz. Hokage-sama, this is most improper." The voice called out again, and a woman stepped into the office. She looked to be in her early 20s, with waist-length silver hair and a ponytail. Her attire consisted of formal office wear, a white shirt, and a black pencil skirt. Her beauty had an otherworldly, ethereal quality to it, as if she were some form of divinity. This was Grayfia Uzumaki, formerly Lucifuge, the wife and personal secretary of Naruto Uzumaki, the 7th Hokage of Konoha. She wanted to become his maid instead, but had relented after a red-faced, sputtering refusal by her husband. Her husband, who was currently sleeping on the job. Soft silver eyes gazed lovingly at the sleeping man, taking in his appearance. A tall and well-built figure, with short blonde hair, and if he weren't sleeping, one could see the most beautiful azure eyes sparkling with amusement. At least to her, anyway. Zzz. Her delicate silver eyebrows twitched in annoyance as Naruto refused to wake up. Deciding to try a different approach, she walked across the room to where he was sleeping. As she neared him, Grayfia could see the piles of paperwork on his desk. Even if Naruto had dozens of clones working on paperwork, the heap still miraculously replenished itself. Despite all her experience as a secretary, Grayfia was still at a loss regarding this problem. She reached Naruto, who showed no indication of being aware of her presence. Was this really the Hokage, the strongest shinobi in the world? Weren't shinobi supposed to be cognizant of their surroundings at all times? With how deeply her husband slept, he would be an easy target for any assassins foolish enough to challenge him. Arriving next to the sleeping blonde, Grayfia leaned down and whispered in his ear. "Naruto-kun, don't you want the ramen I made? I made it just for you." She all but purred, hoping for a reaction. Alright, I'm up. Where's the ramen?" The result was instantaneous. Naruto instantly awoke and jumped upright, narrowly missing Grayfia in the process. He then looked around, aware of the environment for the first time after waking. His gaze landed on Grayfia and he processed what had been said. Then, his eyes widened and he let out a meek whimper. "There's no Ramen." "No, Hokage-sama. I needed to wake you up somehow," Grayfia said, back in her stoic persona. However adorable he might look with that teary-eyed pout, she had to remain professional. "How could you do this to me, Fia-chan?" Naruto wailed pathetically, "You know how much I love Ramen, yet you still tricked me. Have you no shame Itachi?" His rant was cut off in between when Grayfia harshly pinched his cheek. "Please act like a man of your status should, Hokage-sama," she admonished him sternly. "For once, I agree with your wife, Naruto." Kurama grumbled from within, "Your juvenile actions reflect poorly on me, as you are my host." Even if the fox was used to this daily stupidity, it didn't mean he had to like it. "Ow ow ow. Okay, Fia-chan." Naruto extricated himself from his wife's hold, but then mock glared at her. "And how many times have I told you? Call me Naruto, I hate honorifics. You're my wife, you know." Such crass language would be improper coming from one of my station, Hokage-sama. Naruto grumbled incoherently as he set about doing some paperwork. This was always a point of argument among them, one they could never agree upon. Naruto abhorred any titles given to him and thought that his wife, at least, should call him by his name. He preferred it that way, honestly. But Grayfia would spout some drivel about decorum and discipline that went way over his head. Naruto was stubborn, but Grayfia was even more so. But then Naruto got an idea. What? Grayfia gave an uncharacteristic squeak as she was picked up from her position and placed in her husband's lap. Before she could admonish him for his lack of discipline, Naruto placed his head in the crook of her neck and wrapped his arms around her waist from behind. He then proceeded to do his paperwork as if nothing was wrong. "Hokage-sama, what is the meaning of this?" Grayfia asked, blushing slightly. Naruto always managed to fluster her with his spontaneous displays of affection. Whatever do you mean?" Naruto asked while signing some documents. "You know what I mean, Hokage-sama." She narrowed her eyes at him. She was struggling to maintain her work persona, but her husband was so warm that it was proving to be difficult. She had already relaxed and was cuddling up to Naruto. Naruto looked down at his wife, who was glaring at him with her soft silver eyes. Over the years, Naruto had realized that Grayfia didn't like to make their relationship known in public. But that didn't mean Naruto couldn't show his wife some love, did it? "I concentrate easily when you're cuddled up to me, Fia-chan." Naruto gave her a cheeky grin, "Look, I already signed 6 documents." He gestured excitedly at the papers. "Hokage-sama, what if someone walks in?" Grayfia reasoned, "Even your Anbu are watching. Such behavior is unbefitting of the Hokage." However, she made no effort to get out of his hold. Naruto wasn't buying it. "There's some other reason, isn't there?" He lightly pecked her cheek, "You can tell me, dear. If it's really bothering you, I'll release you." His thoughtful reply made things even more complicated for the devil. On the one hand, she was the secretary of the Hokage. She was currently in office hours and had to maintain professionalism. On the other hand, Grayfia was, first and foremost, his wife. She was allowed to be affectionate to him, although the environment could be better. And it did not help in the slightest how cuddly her beloved was. Not that she'd ever tell him, she had an image to maintain. After about 2 minutes of not moving, Grayfia gently shook her head. "It's embarrassing, and I have no desire to let the Anbu or any client intrude on a personal moment." Naruto just hugged his wife tighter, making her wiggle slightly. "Oh, that's so cute. That's just Grayfia speak for I'm shy." He rubbed his cheek against her, "As for the Anbu, I don't care. They don't dictate how I show love to my wife." Naruto finished, grinning madly. He could practically feel an embarrassed Konoha steaming in the corner of the room. Deciding that he'd teased his wife enough, Naruto picked her up again and put her on her feet gently, making her glare at him slightly. She straightened her uniform and gave a small smile, which went unnoticed by him. Nah. Fia-chan, let's go somewhere fun." Grayfia sighed in exasperation. Naruto really had the attention span of a sparrow, he was that hyperactive. "Hokage-sama, stop procrastinating and finish your paperwork." "But it's so boring." "Hokage-sama, do you want to eat boiled broccoli for dinner tonight?" Kage Bunshin. Instantly, a dozen clones of Naruto appeared and set about doing paperwork at a frantic pace. Grayfia twitched again, this was what made him do his work. Not a sense of duty, not protocol, but broccoli. Naruto had an irrational hatred for vegetables, especially broccoli. Exactly how much did Naruto, a person almost incapable of hate broccoli? Enough to make his paperwork clones use ninjutsu. Every one of them, including the original, was somehow wearing glasses. Naruto didn't even need glasses. They were warily glancing at Grayfia from time to time, hoping that she would rescind her threat. She would not. Hokage-sama. Naruto. Grayfia rolled her eyes at her husband. The most powerful shinobi in the world, respected by the entire realm, acted like such a child in her presence. She decided to try a new method, knowing that it would work. It was a cheat she used whenever she needed him to get to work. Anasama. Biwa. Naruto choked on his spit and looked at his wife, with a heavy blush on his cheeks. Even though he was the one who was teasing her, she still had one weapon. Whenever she called him things like Dana-sama or beloved, he would get extremely flustered. Naruto didn't know why he had this weakness, but he did. Ha, whipped. Kurama jeered, disgraceful. Shut up, furball. We'll see what happens when you get married. What the? Naruto cut off Kurama as he tried to get his blush under control. Yes, Fia-chan? He asked with a slight stutter. Damn that weakness for cute names. I have you now. Grayfia thought, smirking inwardly as she prepared her final weapon. One that would work without fail. She almost felt bad for using this tactic, but it was for Naruto's own good. Grayfia fluttered her eyelashes at Naruto, looking to the ground and gaining a fake blush on her cheeks. For the finishing touches, she crossed her arms around her back and whispered in a timid voice. Well, won't you do the work, Dana-sama? She shyly said, for me. Alarm bells were ringing in Naruto's head by this point. What was this? His wife never acted like this. This shy and cutesy side was a complete contrast to the normal Grayfia. Aha. She was tricking him, the minx. She was trying to get him to do the blasted paperwork. He would not relent, he would stand firm. He would. Ah. Too much mo. Critical hit. One look at his wife caused all his thoughts of rebellion to bleed out of him. There was no escape now. Naruto had been ensnared by the puppy dog eyes that his wife was looking at him with. Ooh, Naruto muttered helplessly as he deflated and set about doing his work. You can be really mean at times, you know. Did you say something, beloved? Oh, nothing, Fia-chan. Naruto mumbled with red cheeks. She sure didn't hesitate to use her cuteness at every turn for someone who wanted their relationship to remain private. His heart couldn't take the strain, damn it. But he was still the luckiest man in the world to be married to her. Naruto zoned out instantly as he thought about how he met his wife. Not that he needed a reason to zone out. It was about 10 years ago when Kakashi-sensei was the Hokage. Naruto had been meditating in a clearing to practice his senjutsu. He had sensed a different type of energy signature appear in his senses and had gone to explore it. Flashback, 10 years ago Konoha. As he neared the site, Naruto began to see the signs of a massive explosion. Going on guard, he made his way to the epicenter of the crash. In a huge crater, there was the unconscious form of a woman, bleeding severely from various cuts and wounds. She looked like she had been through hell, a fact which Naruto didn't know was true. Naruto had always been an impulsive shinobi, but his experiences in the war had taught him a few tricks. He quickly activated his negative emotion sensing to look for a trap and found none. He went into his Bijuu cloak and sped back to Konoha Hospital, where Sakura was. Since Tsunade had left on her journey, Sakura was the only medic he could trust. He carried the woman into Sakura's office, where she was thankfully alone. He didn't bother knocking, as he never had before. Sakura-chan, emergency. He said hurriedly, making her look at him. On seeing the situation, her eyes widened. Sakura knew Naruto, probably better than anyone, bar Sasuke. She knew that Naruto was a very kind and caring man, someone who would never hurt a woman anyone, really intentionally. So when Naruto showed up with a bleeding woman in his arms claiming an emergency, she immediately moved them to a room and checked up on the woman. Sakura most certainly did not hit Naruto over the head for supposedly being a pervert. Seriously, who would hit Naruto in such a delicate situation? She used to hit him when he was an idiot, back when she herself was far from a model kunoichi. Hitting him right now would be like criticizing him for helping a woman in need. She wasn't that shallow, damn it. She was a medic, it would mean breaking dozens of rules. Naruto, lay her down here. I'll check her over. Naruto did so and immediately started hounding Sakura for answers. What happened to her, Sakura-chan? Is she going to be okay? What can I do to help? What? Naruto. Sakura cut him off sternly, stop talking and let me concentrate for a second. With Naruto silent, Sakura started her diagnostic check on the woman. Sakura had to admit she was already very jealous of this mystery woman. This lady was several times more beautiful than she was, much to her ire. When Naruto had explained the situation, Sakura had started looking for blunt force trauma, cuts, and the like. Glowing green palms moved over the mysterious woman's body as Sakura got a read on her condition. There were no life-threatening injuries, just some fractures and cuts. She would live, but there was one glaring problem. This woman had no chakra. Not a drop, which puzzled the medic. Every living being had chakra, it was as necessary to them as blood. This woman was an anomaly as she had another energy signature in her body. Naruto, go get the Hokage. He needs to see this. Wha? What happened, Sakura-chan? Is she going to be okay? Yes, Naruto, she's going to be just fine. She said, making Naruto cheer, but you need to get sensei and I need to dress her wounds. Then Sakura gained a teasing glint to her eyes. Unless you want to watch me change her clothes. My, Naruto, how bold of you. She gasped. The thanks be. Naruto had already dashed out of the room with a red face. Sakura chuckled softly to herself, he really was like the younger brother she never had. About 10 minutes later, Naruto returned, dragging a disheveled Kakashi in tow. I'm telling you, sensei, this is important, believe it. Mama, Naruto, what's the rush? I was taking a nap. Look. Kakashi looked, and his expression changed in an instant. He scanned the room, and his eyes landed on the unconscious woman. He looked at Naruto, who was bouncing in anticipation, and Sakura was waiting for a reaction. Explain. After being informed of the problem by Sakura, Kakashi mulled over the information. He closed his eyes in thought as he processed the happenings. Then, he turned to Naruto. Good job, my cute student. Kakashi gave him a thumbs up, you've found yourself a real beauty here. Jiraiya-sama would be proud of you. He said, wiping a fake tear from his eye. I know I am. Sensei, be serious. Sakura snapped at him, what do we do about this woman? Well, ordinarily, the protocol would be to send her to the labs for testing, Kakashi interrupted Naruto's indignant shout with a look. But it looks like Naruto has gotten attached to the young woman. So we'll wait for her to wake up. Naruto's dense inquiries were ignored as they waited, talking about their lives and catching up. They were all so busy that such moments of respite were rare. Team 7 intended to make full use of this opportunity. About 20 minutes later, the woman woke up with a gasp. Before any of the shinobi could address her, she frantically looked around and shouted, Euclid. Sakura went towards the woman, but the patient got into a combat stance after seeing the medic approach. Sakura raised her hands in a non-threatening gesture as she pointed to the bandages on the woman. The woman slightly let her guard down and verified that she had indeed been helped by these people. Where am I? You're in Konoha, in the land of fire. Kakashi said, what's your name, miss? The woman seemed to contemplate the question and eventually answered. Grayfia. Grayfia Lucifuge. That's a strange name. Where are you from? Sakura interrupted, and can you explain why you don't have chakra? Seeing the woman tense up again, Naruto decided it was time to step in. His teammate and sensei were interrogating her as if she were a prisoner, barraging her with questions immediately after awakening to catch her off guard, and that didn't sit right with him. Naruto released some of his warm, comfortable chakra, instantly cutting through the tense situation. Naruto stepped ahead of his comrades and sat next to Grayfia. Kakashi-sensei, let me speak to her. He gave them a pleading look. He miss. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. How are ya? He grinned at her, hoping to loosen some of her cautiousness. He was never one for interrogation tactics and mind games. Naruto preferred to just talk and make friends with people. Naruto's approach seemed to have worked as Grayfia scooted a bit closer to him. She usually would never commit such a foolish mistake, but Grayfia was out of her element here. She was fighting against the anti-Satan faction alongside her brother when a freak spell had knocked her out. She had then woken up in a strange land where she could not sense a single devil. The people who helped her use chakra instead and were treating her as a prisoner. She was no stranger to such techniques, after all. She knew not their power, nor their abilities or numbers. She needed to play it safe. So when the blonde boy told the others to stop questioning her, she felt thankful to him. He had a certain presence about him, something that was making her trust him. He was just so pure and bright, like the sun. In an unfamiliar realm with her magic reserves depleted, Grayfia latched on to the first person she thought she could trust. Grayfia hoped that he wouldn't betray her, as she would be helpless to stop him. She wished she could find a way home to her brother and her family. From that day onwards, Grayfia would only talk to Naruto, no one else. They had gotten the full story from her, and Naruto had promised to try his best to help her. He had learned from previous experiences and promised things solely in his control, like trying his best. He would not let himself suffer such pain anymore. They had discovered, much to Grayfia's sadness, that returning home was impossible for her. The toads also corroborated this theory, making the woman almost lose hope. It was Naruto who convinced her that she could create new bonds here. That she could find new precious people in this world and Naruto would help her. Since then, Grayfia had found that he was one of the few remaining members of the Uzumaki clan and the de facto heir. She felt as if she owed her life to Naruto and hence had pledged service to him. Naruto had firmly refused, stating that he did not want a servant of any kind. He just asked her to find her own path, nothing more. The next few years were the best years of Naruto's life as he had found someone to spend the rest of his life with. Hokage-sama. Grayfia scolded, you zoned out again. What? Naruto said, snapping out of his thoughts. Sorry, I was just thinking about how we met, you know. He gave a soft smile, and how lucky I was to have met you. Naruto looked at her lovingly. Stop trying to distract me, husband. Grayfia cursed herself for stuttering, but she could tell that Naruto was honest in his words. He always was, and that was what made her feel giddy. Yes. You called me husband. Naruto cheered, happy to get one over his wife. Hokage-sama, do you want to become an ice sculpture? Grayfia whispered, trying to quash her blush. She was getting impatient and was flaring her ice magic. The temperature of the room lowered slightly, making chills go up the Anbu's spines. Naruto paled at the thought and created more clones to divide the work. The rest of the hour went without incident, mostly because Naruto wanted to get out of the monotonous office. The second he finished signing his last document, he went to his wife. There, I'm done. Can we please go on a date now? He pleaded while giving Grayfia his version of the puppy dog eyes. Grayfia didn't even need to think about it, his work was over, the documents were signed, and their last date was over 2 days ago. Of course, dear. Lead the way. She even gave him a small smile, now that she was off the clock. That was all the motivation he needed, as Naruto quickly embraced his wife and used Hiraishin to teleport home. The nightlife of Konoha had only improved in times of peace. The Seventh Reign marked a new age of the shinobi world, and most of the people were leading happy lives. It was in this setting that Naruto and Grayfia had set out on their date. Naruto was wearing a blood orange dress shirt and black jeans, whereas his wife had donned a white turtleneck and blue jeans. They looked exactly like the power couple they were. The two were currently on their way to Ichiraku Ramen. While it might not be a date-worthy location for the general public, the restaurant held a special meaning for the couple. It was dear to Naruto's heart, as well as the place where he had his first date with his wife. The fact that his wife loved their ramen only helped Naruto decide to propose to her faster. Via-chan, have I told you that you look super pretty today? Yes, you did. This is the third time, dear. She chuckled. Well, you're just so pretty that telling you once isn't enough, you know. Naruto grinned. How original, husband. Grayfia said, rolling her eyes. Woo, I thought you liked it when I paid you compliments. Naruto muttered sadly, but if not, I'll stop. No. Grayfia instantly retorted but schooled her features. I mean, you shouldn't change your behavior on my account. She coughed and looked away, a mild blush on her pale cheeks. It's not like I minded, she whispered. Contrary to popular belief, Grayfia loved it when Naruto complimented her, as his words were always sweet and honest. Her heart beat faster whenever he called her pretty, and her stomach did a flip whenever he proclaimed his love for her. Which was several times per day, much to her delight. She'd never admit this in public, though. Her pride as the Hokage's secretary was at stake. What would the management community think of her unprofessional attitude? The people of Konoha already thought her a cold and calculating woman, her reputation would be ruined. Also, only Naruto was allowed to say such sweet things to her without being turned into an icicle. That's so adorable. Naruto pulled his wife closer, an arm around her shoulder. I'll give you double praise from tomorrow, believe it. Grayfia's cheeks tinged red at Naruto's loud words. People across the street were staring at them, whispering and cheerfully waving at their Hokage and First Lady. She gave everyone a respectful nod while Naruto boisterously smiled and waved back at them. Now that he finally had the village's respect, he was basking in the limelight. It's Hokage-sama and Grayfia-sama. Are they on a date? How romantic. Why don't you look at me like he looks at his wife? A woman asked her husband, then slapped him on the back of his head for staring at Grayfia. He was not the only one. Grayfia was undoubtedly the most beautiful woman in Konoha, so she had many admirers. Too bad they would have to get through Naruto first, just like Naruto's fangirls were often scared away by his irate wife. There were some disadvantages of being Konoha's poster couple. Everyone's looking at my beautiful wife. Naruto shouted, conveniently ignoring his own fangirls. I'm gonna scare them away. You will do no such thing, Hokage-sama. Grayfia sternly admonished while dragging Naruto towards Ichiraku. The last thing they needed was a scene. Oh, are we back to calling me Hokage-sama again? It is only appropriate in a public setting, Hokage-sama. Naruto sighed as he was led along by his wife. We're on a date, Grayfia. Please, call me by my name. It feels like there's a distance between us when you call me Hokage-sama, and I don't like it. He said seriously. He did not want to be addressed so formally on a date by his wife, it just felt weird. I'm surprised you could construct such a complicated sentence, Naruto-sama. Grayfia retorted calmly, a small smirk on her face. Naruto stared flatly at his wife, suppressing a smile. She referred to him by his name and insulted him in the same sentence. He loved her so much. She was so smart. Call me Naruto-kun and I'll take the insult. he cut in glibly. Grayfia tucked a strand of silver hair behind her ear and averted her eyes. "Okay, Naruto-kun," she said, looking very shy. She wasn't used to such casual behavior in public, but it was exciting. Naruto's eyes widened and he bounced in place. Too cute, must not hug. He dramatically used his left hand to stop his right, which was moving to glomp Grayfia. "That's it, I'm out. Don't wake me up unless someone attacks the village." Kurama grumbled before cutting their link. He knew Naruto well enough to escape the cuteness before it escalated. Grayfia easily dodged a hand and grabbed it. "Let us away, husband." She sniffed and began leading him away. "Ooh, what fancy language. HMPH. They arrived at Ichiraku Ramen, which had expanded to adapt to the new customers which Naruto's fame brought. Since he and his wife were regulars, they had a perpetual reservation in the restaurant. "Welcome to Ichiraku Ramen, oh, Hokage-sama." AM greeted brightly, smiling at the sight of Naruto. The blonde just whined. "Ni-chan. It's bad enough with this one, but not you too." He pointed accusingly at his wife. AM giggled into her sleeve, giving the couple an amused glance. "Naruto-kun, are you here for your date?" "Yeah. But you have a table for two, Ichiraku-san." AM chuckled at Grayfia's usual formality, long since used to it. Even though they had a standing reservation, she still confirmed every time. "Yes, we do. Please follow me," she said and led them to their booth. Naruto rushed past Grayfia and gestured to her seat, bowing slightly. "Milady." He looked very pleased with himself at his manners. Grayfia just deadpanned at him, standing in place. "You're supposed to pull my chair for me, dear. Just saying milady serves no purpose." Naruto blinked. "But it's a booth," he said sheepishly. "Then why even say it? I didn't think that far ahead, okay." He pouted. "I wanted to act all gentlemanly, you know." Grayfia smiled softly at this. Even after years of marriage, Naruto still tried so hard to make her feel special and keep the spark alive. He succeeded tremendously, of course. The little things he did, from pulling her chair to giving her random flowers, made her love him all the more. And now he was sulking, which made Grayfia frown. While she did love all his little gestures, she should be doing a better job of letting him know. She didn't want to appear ungrateful, which was far from the truth. "I'm sorry, Naruto-kun. I'm flattered," she said happily, "my husband is such a gentleman." Grayfia kissed him on the cheek and took her seat. She spotted the faint pink on his whiskered cheeks and smirked victoriously. She resolved to show him more affection from now on. "Well." Naruto stuttered, "Let's eat, shall we?" he said, hurriedly taking a seat and burying his face in the menu. "What'll you have, Fia-chan?" His voice was much lower than one would expect from him. They ordered their food, but Naruto still hadn't looked up from his menu. "Cute." Grayfia decided to tease him a little. "Ara, is my darling husband getting shy?" Grayfia cooed, relishing in Naruto's embarrassment. "How adorable." Naruto jumped a bit as he buried his red cheeks deeper into the menu. "Where's this coming from, Grayfia?" What was this? His wife never called him adorable in public, nor did she show much affection. He was used to her disposition by now, as she was a very professional and private person. But he didn't completely hate this side of her. "You always say such thoughtful things to me, I just thought I'd return the favor." She then gained a sly smile. "Don't you like it, beloved?" "Oh, Kami, my heart. You can't just spring this on me, you know." Naruto lamented inwardly as he was stabbed by a large pink arrow with beloved written on it. Irk. Naruto, even with all his might and fame, still got very bashful when someone actually praised him or paid him a genuine compliment. Words of love by his wife were very rare in public, so they were super effective. For all his attention-seeking in his childhood, Naruto's inability to accept praise was endearing to his wife. Ooh, and just like that, Naruto's brain turned to mush, and he rebooted. Death threats and curses of hatred were fine, but this was too sudden. Grayfia giggled at her slumped husband. "If you can dish it, you have to be able to take it, dear." Naruto recovered and scratched his whisker marks. "I'm sorry, I'm just not used to hearing such things from you, you know." Grayfia looked sad at that, her self-consciousness resurfacing. "I know I don't say such things a lot, it's difficult for me." She had been raised from birth to serve the Lucifer clan, like many of her family. She had no experience speaking so informally to anyone, especially her husband who was also her superior. In private, she opened up and could express herself properly, but it was difficult in public. "I know, honey. And I love you exactly how you are. See? I want to be able to say such things in public to you, to tell you that I love you or compliment you effortlessly as you do to me." She mumbled timidly. "But you say things like that all the time at home." Grayfia sighed in exasperation. Why did he have to be so understanding and selfless? "That's at home, where it's just the two of us." She blushed slightly. "I want to hug you in public or shout out that's my husband. Like you do." Naruto put down his menu as their food arrived. After they were alone again, he reached across the table and gently took a hold of Grayfia's hand. "Fia-chan, listen to me." When she looked at him, he continued. "It's who you are, and I don't want you to change just because I behave a certain way. You're so professional and strict, do you want me to become like you? I want you to take your work seriously, but not to change completely," she retorted. His exuberance was one of the things she loved, and it would be bad if he became cold and stoic like her. "That's how I feel. And since you're not used to public affection, you give the cutest reactions, you know." Naruto grinned and then gripped her hand tighter. "Besides, I like being the only one to see that side of you, it makes me feel special." Grayfia's eyes widened as his words registered. It was another way to look at things. He felt special because only he could see her caring side. That was a big relief to her. She had nothing to worry about, her husband was amazing. He would never hold her personality against her, and it was one of the many things which made her love him. The thought warmed her heart and brought a happy smile to her face. "I love you so much, Naruto-kun," Grayfia spoke softly, tucking her hair behind her ear. "You're the best husband a woman could ask for." She smiled shyly, averting her eyes. It was a stark contrast to her office persona, which made it extremely cute. The Hokage's eyes widened as he heard her. This had to be the first time that Grayfia said those words in a public setting, albeit quietly. One look at his wife told him exactly how difficult it must have been for her to say it. She was looking from side to side, fiddling with her chopsticks and picking at her food. Seeing as she was very vulnerable, Naruto decided not to tease her and instead replied from the heart. Naruto kissed the back of the hand he was holding. "I love you, Grayfia-chan, believe it. You're the best wife too," he said with a gentle smile, which made her blush even darker. It was getting really difficult not to tease her, but Naruto managed to resist. The rest of their date progressed marvelously, and the couple went home hand in hand, with their love reaching new heights. Flashback how they got together. "Naruto, do you like anyone?" When Sakura asked the question, everyone inside Ichiraku, along with everyone on the street outside, ground to a dead stop. It was the only question that mattered to many young girls nowadays. Whom did Naruto Uzumaki like? The hero of the shinobi world was the #1 eligible bachelor in the elemental nations, with many admirers vying for his affections. His horde of fangirls outnumbered all the great shinobi before him, Hashirama and Tobirama Senju, Hiruzen Sarutobi and even Minato Namikaze. Naruto was simply the most popular shinobi ever. So it was understandable that Sasuke, Sai, Tucci, AM and pretty much the entire block came to a screeching halt to finally get the answer they were waiting for. Unbeknownst to them, a certain silver-haired devil was also nearby and had stopped to listen to Naruto's answer. Dozens of heads watched in anticipation as Naruto finished slurping up his ramen and looked to Sakura. "Huh? What did you say, Sakura-chan?" The medic simply repeated, used to his knuckle-headed behavior by now. "I ask you if there is anyone you like." She knew that Naruto no longer had his crush on her as he had moved on before the war started. She was bored and just wanted something to gossip about with Ino. "I like lots of people, Sakura-chan." Naruto grinned, completely missing the point. "No, you idiot. I meant in a romantic sense." That gave Naruto pause, along with all the spectators. He had never thought about it in detail. When he was a child, a small part of him doubted if he would ever find anyone, whether anyone would even want him. Those were the worst times, feeling unwanted and undeserving of love. But then he found his bonds, his precious people. They filled the hole in his heart which a life of loneliness had created. For a while, it was enough. Jiji, Bachan, Hirosenin, and his team were all family. He would cherish them forever. But at the same time, Naruto wanted a family of his own. He wanted children to spoil and love so that he could give them everything he hadn't received. He wanted someone to settle down with, a wife to spend the rest of his life with. He wanted all those things, but he hadn't the slightest idea of how to go about it. His fangirls listened in earnest, eager to find out who Naruto-sama liked. "Oh," he said, looking contemplative, "no, I don't like anyone right now, not romantically at least." All those shallow enough to not notice the somber tone in his voice left the scene, squealing and giggling happily. Only those close to him remained and grew concerned. Sai, who was adept at reading emotional cues, figured out that Naruto was sad. He didn't know why, though. Gucci and AM frowned slightly, as they knew exactly what Naruto was thinking. He had confided in the shop owners quite a bit during his childhood, after all. Sakura and Sasuke also caught on to this, but they had no idea what to do. Blaming herself for making Naruto sad, Sakura decided to just power through the situation. It was how Naruto worked best and she knew it. "Well, alright then. I'll help you," she exclaimed, earning a quizzical look from Sasuke. Grayfia had sat down next to the group, seen by everyone except Naruto, who was back to devouring his ramen. "How? Ino gave me this list of questions to ask for finding out who you like and stealing their heart." Sasuke gave a derisive scoff. Useless. If you want to get a man, stop being so violent. He was promptly bopped on the head by an irate Sakura. It's not useless. Then she blushed in embarrassment. And I'm not violent. Please continue, ugly, Sai spoke and just looked at the oncoming fist blankly as he too was punched. Point proven. Sakura restrained herself and spoke. Naruto, clear your mind completely and answer the questions. You have to answer instantly, okay? She said, getting a nod from Naruto. What hair color do you like? Naruto was in thought and a mop of beautiful silver hair flashed through his head. Silver. Grayfia perked up in the background, looking almost hopeful. She had made it no secret that she was in love with her savior, but the boy was dense as a brick. The devil had been in love with Naruto for years, ever since he helped rehabilitate her. She had tried everything short of telling him outright, but her conditioning and ethics would never permit such a thing. Sai, of course, missed the point completely. I knew it, you are attracted to the Hokage. As your teammate, I support you on this journey. He gave a supportive thumbs up but was ignored by everyone. Sai noted it down under the maybe section of things to say in public. Sakura pressed on. And do you like girls with long hair? Yes. Naruto replied instantly. He always had. Grayfia ran a finger through her long silver locks, still unnoticed by Naruto for some reason. And your favorite eye color? Silver. Sasuke visibly sighed in relief, along with the rest of the audience. Kakashi's eyes were black. Now, shortlisting. Is there any girl with these criteria in your circle? Sakura grinned. To think of it, Grayfia-chan has all those things. Naruto exclaimed. So I like Grayfia-chan. He tilted his head in confusion. Grayfia palmed her face in agitation, still unseen by Naruto. How he became the most powerful shinobi in the nations, she'd never know. You can't ask us that, idiot. Sakura snapped, then realized that she was talking to Naruto. He needed to be guided through this, or he'd never understand. Do you think she's beautiful? Yeah, totally. Grayfia looked away, lest they see her blush. She knew Naruto was tactless, but wasn't this a bit too brazen? Was this how courting progressed? Sasuke saw her plight and smirked. He knew that Grayfia was smitten with a loser, and it appeared to be mutual. There was plenty of taunt material to be found here. So, would you date her? Naruto paused. Would he date her? She was extremely beautiful, so he guessed he was attracted to her. She was also kind, nice, caring and strong. There wasn't really anything he didn't like about her. But did she even like him in the first place? If not, this discussion was moot. He thought about it for a few minutes and then spoke. I mean, I would like to, but why would she date me? He spoke confusedly and a touch sadly, there are plenty of better guys out there, you know. What an idiot. Kurama too was getting fed up. Grayfia, who was on cloud 9 after hearing the first part, was now close to wringing his neck from behind. This denseness was too much. She wanted to freeze Naruto so badly for being an idiot right before hugging him for liking her back. Sakura knew that she was almost there. So if she wanted to date you, you would go on a date with her? She prodded. Naruto scratched his cheek and replied, I guess. If she wanted to, I would gladly agree. But I don't see that happening. So, you'd need a signal? Sakura asked, looking at Grayfia suggestively, an indisputable signal that she likes you. You. Sakura had the most menacing grin ever on her face. Look behind you. Naruto felt a trepidation bubbling in his chest and he slowly turned around. Grayfia-chan. Greetings, Naruto-sama. Naruto laughed nervously. So you heard all that, huh? He said with a mild blush. I did. And? I'm giving you a signal. She said bluntly, then pulled him into a tender embrace, making him squeak. She laid her head against the crook of his neck, shuffling in nervousness. Much to her delight, his arms shortly wrapped themselves around her, holding her gently. Grayfia snuggled into him further, forgetting their audience, delighted after he did the same. They were lost in the moment, content in each other's arms. She was brought out of her trance when Sakura cleared her throat. After she released him with a red face, an equally red-faced Naruto squirmed nervously and asked her. So, will you go out with me? He looked away, fidgeting slightly. He was uncharacteristically shy, which conveyed exactly how vulnerable he was. For Naruto Uzumaki to stutter, the situation was serious. I thought you'd never ask. She smiled and they started planning for their date. Little did they know, it was the start of a lifelong love. Rias Gremory was staring at the paper in front of her with an unidentifiable gaze. When her bishop had delivered the news to her, she was not sure what to think. The Redeed simply opted for asking the bearer of the report for insight. It appears that a student from our school has been killed, Kuroka. The one spoken to was Ria's bishop, Kuroka Taoju. She was a beautiful woman with long black hair and a matching black kimono. Her hazel eyes were twinkling with mirth, as they often did, accompanied by her teasing smirk. Kuroko also had 2 black cat ears and 2 tails, signifying her Nekashu heritage. But they killed Issei because they saw him as dangerous. Should we be worried, Naya? I don't see any reason to be. He did not give off any kind of energy. Because he died in our territory, Naya. Kuroko asked confusedly, aren't you worried that there are rogue fallen here? Rias just steeped her fingers and laid her chin in her hands. I have been aware of them for a long time, my cute servant. She smirked, I just needed to know where they were located, and now I do. Kuroko blinked. So you used him as bait? No. I didn't know that Issei was even a target, but it worked out. My parents would be disappointed in me if I actively bartered in lives like that. Why did you not scout him for your peerage then? Kuroko tilted her head in confusion. And why would I? Rias argued back, I have no reason to scout members as of now. Papa has told me to concentrate on my studies and have fun. She said proudly with a happy smile. That sounds boring, Naya. Kuroko deadpanned as she stretched on the couch. Naya. Then she sat cross-legged and asked, I thought that you would be in an arranged marriage you hate and the new servant would save you gallantly like in those anime you like. Kuroko teased with a cat-like grin. Shut up, Kuroko. Rias snapped with red cheeks, and for your information, I would be in a marriage contract right now if it weren't for Papa. She huffed. Oh? With whom, Rias-sama? A new voice asked, making the two look at the door. The one who had entered looked a lot like Kuroko, except for a shorter height and leaner build. She also had white hair instead of Kuroko's black. She was also wearing a Kuo Academy uniform like Rias. Shirin-chan. Kuroko cheered and glomped the shorter girl, give your big sister a hug, Naya. Shirin simply giggled and returned her embrace, making Kuroko's tails wag. Hi, Ni-chan. Kuroko moved her so that she was sitting in her big sister's lap and started playing with her fluffy white ears. Ni-chan. I'm 15, Naya. Stop that. She complained while trying not to purr. Kuroko paid her no mind and continued stroking her hair with a dopey grin. Shirin just sighed and turned to Rias. So, who would the contract have been with? Ria's good mood deflated instantly as she grimaced. Rise or Phoenix. She said with the most disgusted look she could muster. That asshole sorry. Shirin winced as she was flicked on the ear with a cry of language. From Kuroko. That idiot. What happened? Shirin was extremely interested to know how Rias dodged that cannonball. Rias gained a proud smirk. My father stopped it. She declared and raised her chin haughtily. The Phoenix had gone to him before I was born to forge a union for the good of devil kind. She mocked while making air quotes. And then? Shirin asked, invested in the tale. HMPH. What else? Papa kicked them out the door. He said, my little girl will marry whoever she chooses, the good of devil kind does not take priority over her wishes. And when they tried to get political, he showed them who's boss. Rias pumped her fist in the air, eyes sparkling with pride. You Shirin clasped her hands with stars in her eyes, so cool. Right? Right. Rias nodded her head fervently. Her father was indeed very cool. As expected of Otu-sama. Kuroko said happily, still petting Shirin's head. When she heard this, Rias gained a tick mark on her head. Don't call him that. He's my dad, not yours. She sniffed with supreme arrogance. Boya. Is someone getting possessive? Kuroko teasingly jibed, making Rias flush, but he told us that he considers us his daughters, right Shirin-chan? Hi, Ni-chan. Shirin nodded, making her short hair bob from the motion. He told me he loves me, that he'll always protect me. She trailed off with a beaming grin. It felt really good to know that someone loved you unconditionally and had your back always. Rias was shooting her a death glare, which Shirin ignored as she went into happy memory land. Kuroko also lost all sense of teasing and gained a soft smile on her lips. I still remember when he found us on the streets. He carried us home in his own 2 arms, fed us, cared for us, and loved us. She remembered fondly, I don't know where we would be without him, Naya. She looked Rias dead in the eye, with all the emotion a homeless, scared girl could have. If that's not a father, I don't know what is. After hearing those words from the heart, Ria's glare lost all heat. She just settled for pouting adorably at the cat sisters. Why did her father have the habit of adopting every lonely kid he came across? Her position as his little girl was in danger. She then scoffed to herself, who was she kidding? Her father would always love her, without a doubt. He loved their whole family deeply, and his taking in children in need was one reason he was the best dad in the world. She could make do with a couple of adorable siblings if she had such an awesome dad. Are we talking about Gremory-sama? Rias stiffened as she looked at her queen, who had entered. Akeno Himejima had the most innocent smile plastered on her face, a smile which screamed danger to anyone who knew her. I also owe my life to him, but you. Akeno tilted her head, he is the reason my mother is alive, and I am on good terms with my father, after all. Akeno also had many good memories of Ria's father. He was the one who found us in time to save my mother and me, and he is very important to all of us. She then smirked at Rias, whose pout had only increased. Yufufu, is but you jealous? You're such a daddy's girl, Rias. She cupped her cheek with her palm and swayed slightly. Ria's cuteness was reaching critical levels, where she would probably have killed a lower-ranking being with sheer mo. She huffed in embarrassment, crossing her arms with a cute pout. Seeing her plight, Akeno decided to change her subject. What's this about a student dying? Rias showed her the paper and told her the plan to deal with the fallen. Have you contacted Azazel-sama, Rias? The Alliance will want to know about this. I have, but they are rogues anyway. We have the all clear to wipe them out. Rias said. Even though the supernatural world was in a golden age of peace, such conflicts and rogue cells popped up from time to time. Alright then. We shall deal with them. Akeno nodded. Where are Udo and Gasper? Shirin piped up, still in Kuroka's lap. Oh, they're sparring, Naya. Gaspy needs to fight without relying on his sacred gear, so he is learning Kenjutsu. Understood. Call them up. We move tonight. So, please work with us on this, the Alliance has decreed as such. Rias and her peerage looked at the two exorcists that were seated in the orc room, Irina and Zenobia, along with a nun. They were here to retrieve stolen Excalibur fragments, which were stolen by the fallen angel Cabal. The man had been branded a traitor by the Alliance, but had fled before being tried for his crimes. Rias looked at her knight, who was standing beside her with a blank look on his face. It must be difficult for him, with his history with the Excalibur. She was about to ask him to leave, when. I agree, but you. Let us do the needful. He said seriously, surprising Rias. Are you sure, Udo? Rias asked hesitantly, with your his. I need this, Rias-sama. He cut her off. I have realized that revenge is not the answer, and I need closure. He clenched his fist and stared at her with resolve. Dad must have spoken to him sometime. He's really matured. She mused. Alright, as you say. Akeno pointed at the small nun sitting next to Irina. Oh no, who is that? The nun jerked upright in shock and poked her fingers together shyly. Apologies. My name is Asia Argento. I am here as support for my friends and to heal them if they get hurt. She blushed brightly when Irina patted her on the head. Asia has the Twilight Healing Sacred Gear, which is vital for a mission like this one. Zenobia said, making Rias nod in understanding. Kuroka had a question, however. You would even heal us, Naya. And unwilling to heal a devil. Now she'd seen everything. Asia nodded fiercely, determination in her eyes. Of course. We are all allied now, it is natural. Since the three factions were in a formal alliance, such joint operations were pretty commonplace. Rias decided to steer the conversation back to the topic. Anyway, let us plan a course of action. How convenient for both devil heiresses to be in one place. I shall slay you with haste. Cabal cackled maliciously as he stared at the group of downed devils with all the hatred he could muster. Soon, the world will be bathed in the flames of war. Cabal was and always had been a warmonger. Peace among the supernaturals just didn't sit right with him. What was life without conflict and strife? The Grigori had gotten complacent under that fool Azazel, and they were dallying and making friends in the name of peace. Unacceptable. The fallen were the strongest faction, and he would prove it. He would usher in a new age where they reigned supreme, and Cabal himself would lead them towards this glorious goal. Though I have to admit, you were stronger than I had expected. Not a match for me, of course, but still. He snarked arrogantly, looking at the corpses of Fried and Valper. When he had initially thought that he'd win easily, it had not been so. The Citri girl's peerage was normal, but the Gremory girl's peerage had proven to be very meddlesome. The two cats were capable of Senjutsu. The queen was able to use Baraquiel's holy lightning. The bishop was in possession of the forbidden Baylor view, and the knight was a formidable swordsman with sword birth, which had even attained balance breaker. Even the Redeed herself was proficient in the power of destruction. The Cabal had only been able to win by sacrificing both his underlings. But he had won. The pests were all on their last legs, and it would take but one attack to exterminate them. Rias glared at him with intense hate while clutching her broken ribs. It's because we've been training extensively with our abilities. There are no shortcuts to being strong. She declared resolutely. The Cabal just laughed mockingly. And that is where you're wrong, girl. Power comes only to those blessed by fate, to those with talent. For however hard you might train, you still fell short of my might. He boasted. Akeno limped towards Rias, just as injured. Luckily, due to Asia's help, there had been no casualties, but they were all pretty battered. I still don't understand why you told me not to contact your brother, but you. Rias just looked away, clenching her fists. It's because I'm tired of being the princess or the damsel in distress, Akeno. I am tired of always needing someone to save me. she screamed, making Akeno's eyes widen. "I wanted to prove that I can look after myself, that I can protect everyone on my own." She yelled angrily, with tears in her eyes. Akeno looked at her king with concern and sadness. "Rias." Their moment was interrupted by Cabal. "How foolish." He mocked, smirking maliciously. "If you had called for assistance, you might have won. Your pride will be your downfall." He shouted as he summoned a large number of light spears. As the devils and exorcists looked on helplessly at their inevitable death, Rias glanced at the necklace she was wearing and gripped it with resolve. It was a keepsake given to her by her father, with a unique seal engraved into it. She remembered what he'd told her while giving her the charm. "I know you want to prove yourself, but I'm your father, you know. So don't be afraid to call me whenever you have no way out. I trust you, Rias. I know that you'll only use it after you've given it your best shot. I will always protect you, believe it." Smiling at the memory, Rias clutched the necklace tightly in her hand and channeled her magic into it, hoping desperately that she wasn't too late. Shirin watched in horror as the hail of spears descended onto them like a personification of death. Her life flashed before her eyes, and she found that she had no regrets. She had an awesome big sister and an amazing family with whom she had spent the past years happily. Shirin closed her eyes as she resigned herself to her fate, awaiting her death. When no such death came, she was surprised. She opened her eyes, only to be blinded by several rapid flashes of red. Shirin watched in shock as each spear was systematically destroyed by a corresponding flash. When the flashes of light died down, she was greeted with an unusual sight. There, standing in between Cabal and their downed forms, was a single figure. The person had their back turned to them, but Shirin recognized him instantly. Not many people she knew had such deep crimson hair, after all. Otu-sama. It seemed that everyone else had also taken note of the newcomer and had various reactions. The exorcists and Sona's peerage straightened up in respect, bar Saji, who was new and didn't know the man. Hiroka, who had appeared at her sister's side to check on her, also had a happy smile at seeing the redeed. Akeno, Gasper, and Yuuto sighed visibly in relief, a heavy burden off their shoulders. Rias had tears in her eyes as she clutched her necklace tightly, grinning and crying at the same time from all the exertion. "Papa." The most telling reaction, by far, was from Cabal himself. The man's pride and arrogance had bled out of him completely, and he was staring wide-eyed at the newcomer. "Why you?" He pointed a finger, positively trembling with fear. All semblance of bravado gone, the fallen could only look in shock as he desperately tried to gain his composure. The man who had appeared was a tall man who looked to be in his mid-20s, with a muscular build to emphasize speed over strength. He had spiky crimson hair, sparkling azure eyes, and 3 faint whisker-like marks on his cheeks. He was wearing a formal black suit. "Why are you here, Naruto Gremory?" Cabal shouted, trying to appear strong. "Have you come to be cut down by me as well?" Naruto simply looked at him, looked hard. Cabal started sweating in nervousness, fearing his response. The redeed simply ignored the fallen and made a beeline straight for Rias and the others. Reaching the downed kids, he was immediately tackled in a flying glomp by 3 multicolored blurs. He looked down to see Kuroka, Shirin, and Rias hugging him tightly, sobbing into his chest. Even Akeno joined the group hug with a smile. "I thought I was going to die." Shirin wept as she clutched his suit tightly. "You saved us, Naya," Kuroka said as she, too, hugged Naruto. "Foolish." Cabal shouted as he readied an attack, but he found Naruto looking at him over his shoulder. One of the redeed's eyes was deep crimson with a slitted pupil, and it looked wrong. Cabal found himself rooted to his place in fear, unable to move a muscle. Such power. To freeze me with but a glance. Naruto looked at his daughter, who was hugging him but looking away from him. Gently tilting her head to face him, Rias still averted her eyes. "Rias-chan, look at me." His fatherly tone only served to bring more tears to Ria's eyes. She was disappointed in herself. She had failed to protect those who were precious to her and had to rely on her father to bail her out, again. She was a failure. She didn't deserve to be the heiress. "I'm sorry, Papa." She cried as she clung on to him for dear life. "I couldn't beat him, I couldn't protect everyone." Rias bowed her head in shame. She was a failure, a disappointment. She had trained so hard, sacrificed so much, yet she still couldn't protect her family with her own power. If her father hadn't appeared when he did, they all would have died. She was snapped out of her thoughts when she felt a hand pat her head. She looked up to see her father smiling softly at her. "You did well, sweetie. I'm proud of you." The simple words brought immense happiness and relief to the young girl's mind as she bit her lip to quell the fresh tears that had started falling. "You sit back and relax, okay? Let your father take care of this one." Naruto grinned, poking Ria's forehead. The girl weakly nodded and went towards her peerage to recuperate. Naruto turned to where Cabal was flying, and his smile turned into a snarl. The fallen flinched at the sheer rage emanating from the redeed until he felt it. Death. The Cabal froze in midair as the overwhelming presence of dread washed over him. He had only felt such intense bloodlust once in his life before when he had faced this very man in combat. This killing intent. Overwhelming. The spectators, who were all children, had dropped to the ground from the sheer weight of the pressure, even though it wasn't directed at them. "Who is that guy?" Saji shouted, trembling in shock. Sona pushed up her glasses and looked at him, sweating mildly from the pressure. "That guy, as you crudely referred to him, is Ria's father. Lord Naruto Gremory, the head of the Gremory clan," she said, making her pawn pale in fright. "But why is Cabal so scared of him?" "Lord Gremory is the most powerful devil in the world," Zenobia cut in. As an exorcist, it was her duty to be familiar with key figures of each faction. And Lord Gremory was one of the most famous. He can defeat Cabal with ease. "Wait, the most powerful devil?" Asia shyly said, "then why isn't he a Mau?" "That, I do not know." Akeno glanced at Rias, who was looking away in embarrassment. "But you?" Rias looked at the group with a red face. "He's not leading because he wants to spend his life traveling the world with my mother and eat every kind of ramen in existence," she mumbled, burying her face in her hands. For all the power her father held, his reason for not leading the underworld was lame. Very lame. "But he advises the Mau from time to time," she retorted weakly, trying to save face. While this conversation was taking place, Naruto was having one of his own. "So, Cabal," he drawled, picking at his nails. "Why are you doing this?" The Cabal went on a long tirade about the glorious war, but Naruto was somewhere else mentally. "Finally. A decent fight," Kurama roared in his mind. "Years of your ramen tours and cutesy talks with your wife have made me sick." He grinned menacingly. Naruto just gave the fox a flat look. "I could always summon you out, you know. You could go play with the dragons in the mountains." He clapped his hands gleefully. "As if." Kurama scoffed, "Those lizards are weak. And you think this guy is strong? Well. Thought so. How insufferable. Even when you reincarnated, I am stuck with you." Kurama huffed. "I've grown bored after centuries of peace." "Hey. Look on the bright side, at least I got red hair this time," Naruto boasted as he ran a hand through his magnificent crimson locks. What an imbecile. Naruto just ignored his tenant and focused on the fallen, who was still mid-rant. He stared blankly at him and then shouted. "Hey, idiot." The Cabal balked at the crude statement and looked fit to retort, but then remembered who was speaking. "What? You made two mistakes, you know." Then Naruto vanished in a flash, leaving the spectators to look around wildly. Naruto appeared behind Cabal, with a punch aimed at his face. "Mistake 1, you attacked my kids." The blow connected with the weight of a falling star, and Cabal had no room to dodge. He was sent crashing down to the earth, where a huge explosion accompanied his arrival. He tried to get up, but Naruto was upon him again, his foot on Cabal's back. "Oof." He struggled, unable to move. He looked up at Naruto, who was glaring down at him. "And mistake 2, your timing could not possibly be any worse." Naruto hissed angrily. "You know what I was doing before Rias called me?" Naruto asked, only to receive no reply from the scared fallen. "Do you?" he thundered, making the poor fallen shake his head meekly. "I'll tell ya." Naruto then cupped his cheeks dramatically, swaying from side to side. "My darling Vin-chan had made ramen for me." He trailed off, a bit of drool escaping from his lips. Then his expression turned murderous again. "My beautiful, amazing wife had made special homemade ramen with her own hands." Naruto stomped his foot down, making Cabal's spine crack. "For me." Another stomp, another cry of pain. "And you're the reason it's all cold now." Naruto stomped his foot again, confusing Cabal a lot, even in his state of excruciating pain. The spectators had different reactions. "What?" Tsubaki muttered, not entirely understanding the situation. "He's screwed." Ria's entire peerage deadpanned simultaneously. Naruto looked at the downed Cabal underneath his foot. "But Cabal," he began, causing some of the kids to giggle, "I was planning on flexing a bit since the kids are here, you know." Naruto then materialized a truth-seeking orb and smashed it downwards. "But you're not worth it. Kurama will have to sit this one out." He whispered coldly as the fallen angel disintegrated before his eyes. The spectacle was observed by the devils, shocking them tremendously. Sona looked wide-eyed and turned to Rias. He destroyed Cabal in an instant. What technique was that? Her thirst for knowledge was acting up, eyes practically sparkling in excitement. Such power. Such destruction. She gushed, breaking her composure momentarily. Rias just stuck her tongue out at her friend. "Secret." She smirked. "Spoil sport." Sona grumbled as she looked away. Saji just gulped and stepped back, glad that this monster hadn't heard his earlier disrespect. By then, Cabal was done away with and Naruto turned to the devil kids. With a grin and a cheery wave, he greeted them. "Yo. The Grimoire Peerage and Naruto were sitting in the orc room 2 hours after the incident. Since it was all sanctioned, there had been no legal complications to speak of. They had repaired the school, and the exorcists had gone off to report to their superiors. Naruto was sitting on the couch next to Shirin, petting her head as she slept. The kids were all exhausted, and Shirin and Gasper had conked out, being the smallest of them. "Naruto-sama, would you like some tea?" Akeno chirped from beside him, kettle in hand. "Yep." Naruto blew on it tenderly as he drank the tea, eyes widening at the flavor. "This is amazing, Akeno-chan." He patted her head as well, making her sputter in embarrassment. "Nah, Naruto-sama." The normally elegant queen squeaked with a red face. "What?" Naruto grinned cheekily, "You kids are just so cute, you know." He stroked Shirin's hair softly, making her purr in her sleep. Adorable. He enjoyed teasing the children immensely. Before Akeno could be further embarrassed, a jealous Rias cut in. "Papa." "Yes, Rias-chan." Naruto looked at her, smiling. Well, she trailed off, unsure of what to say. She had just interrupted to get his attention, but had no plans on what to do with it. "Otu-sama, are you coming to the open house?" Kuroka asked from across the room, saving Rias. She was also lying down on a couch by herself. "Of course. I wouldn't miss it for the world." Naruto pumped his fist in the air. "I wonder what chaos everyone will cause together under one roof, yuhuhuhu." He giggled with gleaming eyes. So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.